structural, monetary or fiscal?
Okay, thank you.
Two parts to your question, monetary or fiscal. I think we need both. We need both monetary and fiscal policy to act in tandem. The fact that he has provided the necessary room for monetary flexibility by sticking to fiscal target suggests that monetary and fiscal policy will act in tandem in the years to come. Second, what was needed to create demand? What was needed to create demand was to really give a great boost to India's rural economy, from where 55% of the demand emanates, and this has been an important focus. Also, I think that to create demand and virtuous circles for private investment by investments in infrastructure, in particularly roads and railways, will create demand in the system in a significant way, added to which, of course, is the freeing up of a lot of stranded assets, which will enable green shoots of fresh investment to sprout.
You have a question there?
My name is Rajiv Khurana. This is a little hypothetical question. If the panelists were the finance minister this year, what are the things you would have done and not done?
Good question. I thought I was going to take that in closing, but I'm glad you echoed my thoughts. You want to start with that? You said, what is the budget missing? So it's your chance now.
As a businessman, I feel one thing which has been missed out. Last time, Mr. Jaitley said he will reduce the exemptions and reduce the corporate taxes. The intent remains the same, but I wish a clear roadmap was given, in which case one can plan out for years together in the next 3 years, what are the exemptions going, so that it doesn't come as a sudden shock to you. And the 1% extra surcharge which he has raised last year on the corporate tax, even that has not been rolled back. So the difference is only for new companies, companies with smaller profits, etc. I'm not even quibbling about that, but I think a clear roadmap is required in that direction.
Mr. Munjal, you agree? You've been left a little confused on corporate taxes after this budget?
Yes, clearly tax is one area in which industry had expected some move forward on the pre-announced transition from. And incidentally, there is one more clarification. It's not quite clear in the sense they've said we will reduce tax from 30% to 25%. Whether this includes cess, etc. or not is not quite clear, because the current taxes, including cess, is about 33 or 34%. And the tax actually being paid at this moment, different numbers, I don't know what the accurate number is, has shown between 21 to 24.5% is, I think, what the FM said. So if it's 21 or 22%, then you're talking of reducing from 34 to this, if this number is accurate, to be revenue neutral, because that's one of the other commitments the government had made, is the transition will be revenue neutral. So the industry, the consumer, the common man does not end up paying more than they are currently paying. So that bit is not quite clear. But I like some of the things that they have announced, and I could have taken this a step further on the social front. One on the health insurance, on the EPF. Actually, it's a bit surprising people have objected to it. What they've said is quite interesting. They said, if you, what your provident fund is, if you take out up to 60%, it's fine, there's no tax on it. We want you
40%.
to leave, I'm sorry, 40%. And we would want you to leave 60% in annuities, put it in investments, and there's no tax on it. If you want to take it out and spend all of it, then there is a tax on it.
But that's the argument, that why should the government be big brotherly? It's my money, I can do what I want.
You're absolutely right. But if you see in the overall system, we have no social security system as a nation. Yeah. So you are kind of creating a quasi-social security system through these instruments.
Actually, in some sense, this budget has ignited the whole debate around the future of finances and saving in India. You have a question there, sir. Can we get a mic here, please? Okay, you have a mic there. We'll let him go first and then the mic come to you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes.
First of all, wonderful analysis by the distinguished panelists. My specific question is that I'm Sumit Chaudhary from Third Millennium. My specific question is that, successive governments, I feel, have not done enough to bring more and more tax payers into the net, particularly direct taxes. How long will this 3% keep on taking the load of the government?
It's a politically sensitive question, so why don't I get the part politician to answer that? How tough is it to expand the tax base given the political realities of our country? I mean, not many governments will have the political courage even with a 281 or a 282. You talk about it.
Well, you know, having been former revenue secretary, I think that I'm somewhat at a disadvantage to answer this question. First of all, I think that why is it that a very large segment of India's population is outside the tax net? This is because if, as I said, 45% of the people are deriving livelihood from agriculture, even though currently 14 to 15% of India's GDP is being contributed to agriculture, the agricultural sector is outside the taxation net. So you have knocked out a huge number of people outside. Now, whether there should be imaginative ways, considering the fact that in cities in Punjab, maximum number of BMWs and very high luxury end cars are to be found in some of those cities, should they also be outside the tax net? That is both a politically and a moral question. So I think that's an important kind of a thing.
Right.
Second, I think that how to expand the tax net, should we index it? Considering the fact that the number of people who are paying more than 1 crore in this country is a minuscule as compared to how many people really earn that even in South Delhi, it suggests really exceedingly poor quality of enforcement of the tax regulation. So one is a question of net, other is a question of quality of enforcement.
Also compliance. But if I may ask you, you think in some sense, Mr. Gangopadhyay, the economic survey this time has started the debate around it. They've put it in black and white that the rich farmers should be taxed, the rich farmers should be paying urea at market rate. Do you believe that debate very subtly has been introduced in the public space?
This debate has been in the public space for a very long time. But the thing is that I don't understand why we should address the central government this question. Because the central government has very little to do with it. The states have to get their acts together. So, you know, it's a very good debate to have because the central government has no responsibility other than saying, yes, it should be done.
Yes.
So I think the debate should go down to the state government level if we really want it. Indeed, it is a travesty of justice, right, what Mr. Singh said, that goes on in terms of tax paying in India. So I don't think that is the issue. But I want to go back to something that was asked, if I may. Yeah.
Sure, absolutely.
In terms of...
if you were FM, what would you do?
Yeah, no, first I don't want to be the FM. But one thing, I hope that he believes in what he said. He made a statement about a sunset date, right, for all schemes. And in particular, I hope that he means that also for the new crop insurance scheme that is being introduced, right? Now, if there is to be a sunset date, right, then again, to keep things transparent, it is imperative that, you know, a proper evaluation design is done and the data is put out into the public domain. The sunset date makes no sense if that aspect is not undertaken, right? He did talk about outcomes, of course, but it is more than that. Because we have been talking about outcome budgets for a very long time, and most of the outcome is just process mapping. So that's not the outcome that we are looking for when we talk about sunset date, right?
Fair
so
point.
I seriously think that the government believes in that clause of a sunset date.
You have a question there, sir, right in front.
Yeah. Krishan Kalra, past president of AIMA. Along with all the wonderful things that the finance minister has said about the rural development and infrastructure sector, I think this provision about reducing the weighted deduction for research from 170% to 150% going on to 100% next year, isn't that a wrong signal to the industry, sir? That's number one. Number two, we make much song and dance about disinvestment, but who's picking up the stake in the government entities, LIC? I mean, aren't we just transferring from one pocket to another? Is that
NTPC this time, though, has belied that, but yes, your observation is correct by and large. Mr. Singh, you want to take that? The first part maybe you could take, and then I could throw to Mr. Munjal for
Well,
the
I
second
think that
part.
on the, let me make just one comment on the second part. Yes, I agree with you, but let me put it another way. If really there was a disinvestment, and the proceeds of the disinvestment were put, let us say, for improving infrastructure, isn't it a shuffling of the quality of assets government wants to have? Moving from one poor quality assets where money was locked in and value was locked in, to improving, let us say, infrastructure, which will have multiplier gainful effects of the economy. And to some extent, this overcomes the moral hazard of the volatility in stock market behavior and the suggestion that family silver has been sold far too cheap. So I think these are different ways of really looking at it. What is the first question?
The first one is about research.
Well, look, I mean, yeah, no, I agree that research needs much greater support, but it's a question of the weighted deduction which you are talking about and the percentage of it. Frankly speaking, I think that, you know, if you look at the document on revenue foregone document, which for some years has been now put in the public domain, it comes with the budgetary documents. It's a green colored document. The bulk of the benefits of exemptions are from accelerated depreciation, incentive-based investment allowance, and this stuff which you're talking about, and a very high rate at which reductions were allowed for R&D. Somewhere there has to be a calibration. Now, whether this is the right level of calibration or not has been put in the public debate, but if exemptions have to be withdrawn, these are the three principal areas where naturally exemptions would have to take a part.
But I must put a counter question to that to you, Mr. Munjal. Is the industry not divided on the issue? You want exemptions to go, you want corporate tax to be lowered, and then there is a section of the industry that starts talking in another voice. So you are a divided house as well on this.
So what industry has been saying for a while is moderate tax rates, reduce the exemptions, if not take them away entirely. However, exemptions are directional tools used by governments worldwide. It's not unique to India in encouraging specific activities, direction, or spend. And by the way, I agree with the point that's being made here, that innovation and research is the way for India to go. We want to be a leading economy in the world. We want to stand up and be counted amongst industrial nations of the world. In that respect, research will have to be a big or much bigger focus than it has ever been. Mm-hmm. So encouraging research is actually good. So, which is what, by the way, FM also said to Mr. NK's point, he took away 30 cesses, but he put 2 or 3 in,
that's right,
which are currently required. I think we need to have the same approach to exemptions. Take away the bulk of them, keep a few of them which are focused, directed, and for a specific purpose, again to the point Shubhashis just made. Once you achieve that objective, you need to take away that facility or moderate the facility.
Fair point indeed. I've completely run out of time here. I'm sorry, I will not be able to take more questions. The panel is here. On their way out, they could take questions if you would want to. But just to sum up this discussion, and we all agree that India is a bright spot in an otherwise nasty neighborhood, and we do hope that this budget is going to make us a lot brighter.